Hey guys, this is Webb, and today I'm here with a definitive guide on Sheik's Footstool down air. This is just going to be the first of a couple of Sheik guides I have planned. I'm pretty new to content like this, but I've got some really good info to share with you guys about Sheik. Overall, I'm going to try and make these guides as informative as possible without dragging it on for too long, so hopefully you guys enjoy the content and support for future guides. So, now I'm going to show you the ins and outs of Sheik's Footstool Dair. What it is, where to use it, and how it works, and how to really turn it into a true 50-50 on 99% of the casts. I'm not joking with that. So, I think it's one of Sheik's best combo tools when used effectively, but there's a lot of nuance into how it works, because it's actually pretty character dependent. But I'm not gonna yap for too long, I just want to keep things moving, so let's get right into it. So Sheik is one of the many characters in the game that can combo off of the hit stun of a footstool. In her case, the only move that she's actually able to reach in that time, which is 21 frames of advantage if you didn't know, is down air. So there's actually a couple of ways to set up Footstool with Sheik that are really practical actually. So let me show them off right now. One of the most common places you'll be finding your footstools, not even just with Sheik but across the entire cast, is footstool out of shield. Footstool allows you to out of shield options that normally Sheik wouldn't be able to because it's too low, or because it's just too safe, since footstool out of shield can come out as soon as frame 4. Very good option. Another common way you should be landing footstools with Sheik is by comboing into footstool. Sheik has multiple ways to combo into footstool. Some more practical than others, but the most practical ways to combo into footstool with Sheik are with the following. Forward air into footstool. Nair into footstool. Weak back air into footstool. And needles into footstool. Those are going to be the main 4 ways you're going to be comboing into a grounded footstool with Sheik. There is an extreme case with up air, but I don't think it's practical whatsoever. The third way to set up a footstool with Sheik is to footstool them out of a tech chase. It's possible to footstool opponents in their tech rolls or their neutral tech animation, but if they miss the tech and then they roll afterwards, you're not able to footstool them.
Setting the neutral, this is his opening, getting the tech chase again, and that's gonna be death? Are you kidding me?
These ambitious down airs from Webb, some have hit the mark, but some are a little bit too ambitious. I like that one though, the up air and the cross up.
Play advantage state in a way where he's being respectful, but he's also being very evasive to Aquala's reverses, so it's making it hard for him to find these counter hits and get the big damage like he was getting in those first 2 games.
Perfect, that's what we're looking for.
Dude, what in the
Okay, Webb. Yeah.
You're also able to footstool a lot of characters out of their up special landing lag. And finally, there are some special moves that you're able to footstool despite them not being up specials. Sheik Needles is an example of this, Wolf Flash is another one, but it doesn't work for every special. For example, Sonic's homing attack, you can't footstool. So Sheik's Footstool Dair is actually a decent option at low percents, not just at higher percents. At low percents they can combo if they don't DI properly. And if they do DI properly, they're going to be setting themselves up for a tech chase, which you can still follow up on since Sheik is so fast, obviously. But I think it does really become way more devastating at the higher percents, where you can start setting up for big damage combos or kills. But in order to really get the most out of Footstool, you're going to need to understand how to influence when they DI the Dair. This is where things are going to start to get complicated, so bear with me. So there's actually 2 ways you can use to cross up your opponent's DI with Sheik's Footstool Dair. The first way to do this is to do a RAR Footstool. So right now I have the CPU holding to the left. So if I do a normal footstool, the alpha's going to get sent behind me, and that's going to be the correct DI, so it's going to be hard to get a good follow-up off of that. But if I run up to him and do a RAR Footstool, since he's holding to the left, that's going to be perceived as DI in, so he dies. It might feel a little bit weird at first to do a RAR Footstool, but once you get it down, it's pretty fluid. What I basically do is just a slingshot input and then do a double tap on my X button, which is my jump button. The only limitation to this method is that it's impossible to RAR Footstool out of shield. Since you're going to be locked in shield, you can't RAR out of shield, you can't do those dash frames. But in every other scenario that I showed, comboing into it, up B landing lag, tech chases, every other scenario you'll be able to do a RAR Footstool. So this is a method that's going to be really practical and definitely going to be one that you're going to want to know. So the second method. This one's going to be a little bit more complicated than the RAR method. The second method is to mix up your opponent's DI by drifting during the footstool hit stun. I mentioned earlier that footstooling had 21 frames of advantage. Sheik's downer is active on frame 15, so it's actually possible to delay your downer by a few frames so that the downer hits on the other side of your opponent, sending them to the other side and essentially mixing their DI. Now, I know I just said a lot and that might be a little bit hard to visualize, but just think of it like this. When I footstool downer Falco, he gets sent behind me when I buffer it. But if I drift to the left for a little bit before I footstool downer Falco, he goes in front of me, which would allow me to get an up smash and get the kill there. Most characters' footstool animation gives Sheik 3 frames of leniency on delaying her down air after footstooling and still true comboing, but some characters only give 2. The characters are pretty few and far between where it's 2, and the only character that it's relevant to is Byleth, so don't think about it too much, you'll understand later on. Think of it as most characters give you a 3-frame window to Dair. Mixing DI is extremely, and I mean extremely, character dependent with this method, but it is consistent given your execution is good, and I think it's better than the first method with RARing your footstool. I'll explain why later. Another super important thing to note before diving into the specifics of how this works is that when you're mixing your opponent's DI with the drift method, it heavily depends on whether you and your opponent are facing in the same direction like so, or if you guys are facing the opposite direction or each other, like this. This is really important to note because we mentioned earlier that you can RAR footstool in every direction, or every footstool scenario, except for out of shield. So it's possible to use these 2 methods in conjunction to mix DI and get just the follow-up that you want. Okay, so now that we got that out of the way, it's time to pull up the chart of how it works on every character. So I'm gonna put it on the screen right now. Yeah, it's a lot to digest, right? So, the way I formatted this chart is to show how many frames you need to drift in order to get the Dair to send the opposite direction of how it sends when the footstool Dair is buffered. So, for example, in the first row, the footstool Dair, when you buffer it, sends the opponent behind you. But, if you drift from anywhere from 1 to 3 frames behind the opponent, then it'll send in front. Hopefully that makes sense to you. There'll be a lot of visual examples coming up. Since the data changes depending on which direction you and your opponent are facing, there's 2 charts. I'm gonna leave this down in the description for you guys to see, as well as posting it in the public Sheik Discord, which I'll also link below. I want to make sure that this is really readily available for you guys, since it's not something that you're probably going to be memorizing, so having it on hand can be really convenient. Okay, so I wanted to show you guys this in action, since it's probably not easy to completely digest just by listening so quickly. Inkling is a character that is probably the easiest, not even probably, she definitely is the easiest for Sheik to do this tech on. In both directions, whether you're facing the same direction or you're facing each other, she's always going to have 3 frames of leniency for you to switch up her DI. So normally when I buff her down air, she's holding to the left right now, by the way. She's gonna go behind me, and she's gonna go really far since she's holding to the left. But since Inkling has a 3-frame leniency, when I footstool Inkling, see, I'm airborne, frame 1, and I down air. She's gonna get sent in front of me and does this DI in, which would convert into a kill. Now, same concept, except instead of being frame 1, airborne, right here, frame 2, frame 3. Same result. Now, not every character is like this, like I showed in the chart. Let me show you some other characters. Now, on to Sonic. Sonic is a character that works just like Inkling, where whether you guys are facing each other or facing the same direction, you're still going to be able to influence their DI with the drift method. However, Sonic is only a 1-frame window, whereas Inkling was a 3-frame window, so it's really easy on Inkling. Basically just don't buffer it and you got it. But Sonic is a 1-frame window, so that means you have to hit him on the 3rd actional frame in the air after a footstool. So let me show you that in frame by frame. So, airborne 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frames, and he sends in front, converts into a kill. So if I do 2 frames, he still gets sent behind me. I should have also showed that buffered, he gets sent behind me. And if I do a 4-frame wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's able to shield. So Sonic, despite working in either direction, so you never have to worry about out of shield not being able to control his drift, or control his DI, excuse me. It's only a 1-frame window. So it's going to be a lot more difficult to land on Sonic without practicing this method. But you do have the option of doing it in any scenario, so you do have that. There are also some characters that you can't mix their DI whatsoever using the drift method. Pac-Man is one of them. No matter how much you drift, or for how long, he's always going to get sent behind you. But that doesn't mean you're not able to mix his DI whatsoever, since you can still use the RAR Footstool method to mix his DI. He's holding to the left right now, and a Footstool in this direction would only give me back air, or forward air. But a RAR Footstool allows me to get up smash. So this time I picked out Joker. The reason I picked out Joker is because he's one of the characters where the drift method doesn't work on both orientations like it did with Sonic and Inkling. Now, you see how right now Joker and I are facing the same direction? So if I Footstool him and buffer the down air, he's gonna get some behind me. But if I Footstool him and delay by 3 frames, which is the maximum amount of frames that I can delay before he's able to shield, 1, 2, 3, and down air, he still gets some behind me. So does that mean that the drift method is just not useful versus Joker at all? No, it just means that you have to make sure that you guys are facing each other, like so. So if I buffer the down air in this scenario where Joker and I are facing each other, he's gonna get some behind me. But if I Footstool Joker and delay from anywhere from 1 to 3 frames, right here it's the first actionable frame airborne, and I down air after drifting for 1 frame, I'm able to convert that into a kill. So I mentioned earlier that there's going to be points where you're going to want to use both the RAR method and the drift method in order to mix your opponent's DI to get just the follow-up that you want. So in this scenario, since I can't use the drift method while I'm facing the same direction as Joker, if I want to mix his DI while he's holding to the left, one way I could remedy that is by doing a RAR Footstool. That would send him at the correct angle and allow me to get a kill. Now, if he's holding to the right, and I do a RAR Footstool in anticipation of him doing the correct DI, but he actually switches his DI, he's gonna get sent hard right, because he's getting sent behind me on the down air because I'm buffering it. Now, when I'm doing the RAR Footstool, it's actually impossible for him to realize which way to DI because I give myself access to the drift option, or the drift method, excuse me. So if I do a RAR Footstool in this scenario while he's holding to the right, normally he would get sent behind me on a buffered down air, and he'd get sent far to the right. But if I do a RAR Footstool into the drift method, drifting for 1 frame behind Joker, and then I down air, I'm able to send him in front of me, which would allow me to cross up his DI and allow me to get the kill. This is just one of many examples where you're going to want to use the drift method and the RAR method in conjunction in order to mix their DI. Because if you only do it from the back, or when you guys are facing the same direction like so, there is no DI mix if you do a normal Footstool. There's going to be a correct DI, which would be to the left. But if I do a RAR Footstool, then he has to guess because he's guessing with the drift method along with the RAR Footstool method. So there's so many different layers to the Footstool DI, it makes it a lot more difficult for the Joker to DI correctly. So by using both methods, both RAR Footstool and the drift method, there's almost no scenarios where you're unable to control which way the opponent has to DI, in some sense. Some are greater than others. RAR Footstool obviously you can't do out of shield, so if you're not able to get yourself in a position, then it is what it is. But in most scenarios, you'll be able to have some sort of influence on your opponent's DI and which way they should, and create it into a 50-50 that they have to guess for their life. or for big damage. It's actually funny, the only character in the game that this doesn't work on, because I said it worked on 99% of the cast, is Little Mac. Right now I have him holding to the left, and no matter how much I drift, no matter which way I'm facing, he's always going to go to the left. No matter how much I delay, he's always going to the left. Little Mac is the only character in the game that has a correct DI on Sheik's Footstool down air, regardless. It's kind of funny. But yeah, that's pretty much all the info I've got for Footstool down air with Sheik, regarding where to use it, how to use it, and how to influence DI. I'll probably end up leaving a couple of showcases of how to use Footstool Dair in combos, and how you can really exploit how powerful it is as a DI mix. But other than that, I think I'm done here. Appreciate everyone for tuning in and supporting the channel. My first video and my first real guide, so hopefully it was clear and concise. Didn't ramble on for too long, but yeah. Thank you again, and hopefully I see you in the next one. Later.